Hi, I'm Shirley Houston. I'm an independent educational consultant based in Perth, Western Australia. I've been working in the areas of specific learning difficulties and inclusive education for over 40 years. A lot of my work is with students who have working memory deficits associated with specific learning disabilities. The number of students being identified with working memory deficits seems to be increasing. Does this situation sound familiar? You teach a concept to a class over 2 or 3 lessons. At the end of the term, you test student recall and understanding, and 5 or 6 students failed the test. It looks like they haven't remembered anything that you taught them. Why didn't they remember? Memory is the ability to store and retrieve information when we need it. It involves several processes and it can be split into different types, each of which plays an important role in the retention and recall of information. The 4 main categories of memories are sensory memory, short-term memory, working memory, and long-term memory. All other types of memory tend to fall within these major categories. Let's have a look at what might have happened to the information you gave your students about the concept that you taught them. All memories begin as sensory memory. In the classroom, we're talking about what they've seen, what they've heard, what they've touched. If a sensory experience recurs and it's linked to other memories, the information moves to short-term memory. Short-term memory is active memory and lasts only 15 to 30 seconds. Information can be kept in short-term memory if it's rehearsed. One reason for your students' lack of recall may have been that the information you gave them wasn't rehearsed enough to go into short-term memory. It got lost. Working memory is more than the ability to hold information for a short period of time. It's the conscious ability to hold and manipulate that information in the mind for a short period. To use or work with the information, thus the name working memory. Working memory is where all our mental processing and real-time thinking takes place, where we combine incoming information from the environment with retrieved information from our long-term memory. It serves as a mental workspace, facilitating learning, reasoning, decision-making, and problem-solving. It enables us to reorganise thoughts or materials and focus our attention. It's particularly important when a task is novel or complex. I'm going to give you my phone number now. I want you to imagine that you have no pen or paper on which to write it down before you put it into your phone in the next room along with my name. Don't write it down until I tell you. Listen. 0, 4, 6, 6, 6, 9, 5, 3, 8, 5. Now write it down. Some of you may have chunked the digits. You might have rehearsed the chunks, saying them over and over to yourself. If you did have to walk into the next room to put the number into your phone and someone spoke to you as you walked, the chances are that the information would be lost. Chances are you've forgotten the number already and you haven't gone anywhere. So here it is, chunked. 0466 695 385. Practically every piece of information that must be learned or remembered must pass through working memory. It's the information's entry ticket to the long-term memory storage. Research indicates that the way in which we engage with information in our working memory influences how well this information is stored in long-term memory, which has unlimited capacity in terms of space and also time. As we learn, we arrange information in sets of ideas called schemas that help us make sense of the word. Those mental models are stored in long-term memory and they're always changing. I like this explanation from the helpful professor, so I'll give you a few seconds to read that. The more we use schema, the more developed they become and the easier it is to remember them. If a schema is based on flawed understanding or limited experience, then it's harder for that new information to stick. The schema has to be reconstructed before it all makes sense. The capacity of a student's working memory can determine how many items or pieces of information can be held in mind at once in order to use the items together or to link them to form a new concept in long-term memory. Working memory capacity, as you can see on this slide, develops steadily in the frontal lobe from the ages of 4 to 14. Relative capacity stays the same. That is to say, if your working memory capacity is low when you're in year 2, it's likely to be so even in year 7 or year 9. It may be that your students had poor recall due to low working memory capacity. There can be significant variance even within an age group. If the amount of information to be processed exceeds a student's working memory capacity, then there's nowhere for the information to go. It gets lost and it has to be inputted again. If the student has slow processing speed, information will have to be stored in working memory for longer. If information comes in too quickly, over an extended period of time, the student's brain will be unable to process it all. So your student's poor recall may be the result of too much information or information being presented too quickly. Another aspect of working memory performance is the amount of energy needed to sustain focus on relevant information. Students who have weaknesses in their central executive system will struggle when a task is complex and a lot of effort is required. ADHD is characterised by impaired executive functioning. Students with ADHD are 4 times more likely than their peers to experience working memory problems. Working memory is the most fragile of all of the memory types. Information in working memory is easily lost if working memory is overloaded or undermined by distractions, time constraints, or stress, such as anxiety or pain. Your students may have had poor recall due to any of these factors. Because working memory is so vital for the movement of information into long-term memory for learning, it is important that teachers be aware of the indicators of working memory. Problems. You'll see the key indicators on your resource sheet. I'd like you to have in mind a student you suspect has low working memory. As we go through the indicators, either physically or mentally place a tick next to the indicators you're seeing in this student's behaviour. Frequently has incomplete recall, so remembers only part of what the information was. Has difficulty following instructions, especially those with multiple parts. So the student may remember only 1 or 2 parts, or might remember the sequence incorrectly. Makes frequent place-keeping errors in reading, writing, maths tasks. is often unable to start or complete a task without assistance because the information needed hasn't been recalled. Has difficulty with problem solving because it requires simultaneous processing and storage. Often interrupts, fails to wait for the turn, makes impulsive responses. Tends not to volunteer answers or contribute to class discussion because they've forgotten the question or their own answer. Has difficulty organising materials and/or keeping to a schedule. Tends to like hands-on learning because it reduces the need for working memory. Has inconsistent performance, so it's really dependent on the effort needed to recall. Has difficulty monitoring the quality of their own work. They're often unaware of the steps taken to achieve success. As a teacher, you should be aware of these behaviours and respond with effective intervention. You might use that list as a checklist, a basic screener, or just a conversation starter with a parent or a colleague or a school educational psychologist. For many years, one of the ways in which educational psychologists have assessed working memory has been to give the student a series of numbers to repeat in reverse order. Let's see what your working memory is like. I want you to listen to these sequences of numbers and say them to yourself backwards. The correct answer will show on the next slide after you've responded. 7, 3, 1. 9, 6, 3, 2. 8, 1, 7, 6, 4. 9, 6, 2, 8, 5, 5. How did you go? There are two types of working memory, verbal and visuospatial. You've just tested your verbal working memory because numbers are stored in your brain as words. We could have used to assess working memory letters in sequence, or words in sequence, or pictures in sequence. These days, most IQ assessment tools measure 5 cognitive domains that impact performance. One of those domains is working memory. And the tasks in the testing measure both visual spatial and verbal working memory. Working memory difficulties often coexist with other issues, such as ADHD, as I mentioned, but also dyslexia, dyspraxia. They can also be a standalone problem. A learning difficulty might be associated with visual spatial or verbal working memory deficits, but some feature a combination. The students who have a combination are the ones who are most often at risk. Cognitive load refers to the effort it takes for our working memory to make sense of information at any given time. The complexity of a task or material, the amount of information being taken in at one time, and the effort needed to convert new information into schemas in our long-term memory all contribute to the overall cognitive load that's placed on a learner. When that load is high, learning will be much more difficult. Overload leads to information loss. Either incoming information won't be processed, or an item in process will be dropped for a new one. There are three main types of cognitive load: the intrinsic, which is inherent to a task; the extraneous, which is external, added to the task; and germane, which is sometimes referred to as productive struggle. Teachers should try to reduce the difficulty and complexity of a task for the student who has a working memory deficit and/or is experiencing cognitive overload. The teacher will need to reduce distractions and optimise the elements of a learning experience that facilitate deep processing of new information and the integrating of it with prior knowledge. Some tasks are intrinsically more demanding than others. So solving simultaneous equations is intrinsically more difficult than adding one-digit numbers. This is because of the number of elements in the task. Intrinsic load is hard for a teacher to reduce, but it's often possible to manage the load by increasing familiarity with the information, introducing key terms and principles before the task, breaking the task into smaller steps, and moving systematically from simple ideas to complex. Extraneous load is the load that teachers have most control over. It's possible to minimise extraneous load by reducing the amount of material to be stored, reducing the difficulty of processing, repeating important information, reducing complexity, reducing choices, and providing more structure. As we only have an hour together, we'll just be focusing on reducing the amount of information that has to be kept in working memory and repeating important information. If we present information in carefully sequenced small bites in a skill hierarchy, link it to information that's already in long-term memory, and scaffold learning, we're going to reduce the load on working memory. There's a good deal of research that indicates that direct instruction, that is teacher-directed instruction, at student skill level has a large positive effect on the learning of novice learners. We talk about big DI in capital letters and little di in lowercase letters. Both focus on explicit and systematic instruction. Big DI refers to commercial programs that are based on a model of instruction developed by Engelman and his colleagues. So you may have seen spelling mastery, reading mastery, corrective reading, expressive writing. These programs incrementally increase complexity and sophistication. They feature fast-paced scripted lessons, corresponding by children, and immediate error correction. The script ensures that teacher language is kept simple and to a minimum with consistent use of vocabulary. The student doesn't have to recall the meaning of different words used by different teachers. Lessons are highly structured so that students have a high degree of familiarity with the lesson structure and its activities. Routine reduces the load on working memory. Learning is scaffolded with the gradual release framework. I do, which is teacher modelling. You do, we do, which is guided learning. And finally, you do, independent activity. Little DI can be used in any subject at any grade level with any high quality materials. It involves use of highly structured materials, clear, concise instructions, frequent, active student response, and immediate feedback. As with big DI, little DI incorporates systematically sequenced instructions along with gradual increases in rigour and difficulty. So we're going to watch a short video that demonstrates how Blue Haven School has introduced direct instruction.
Welcome to Blue Haven Public School. We've just commenced our journey into explicit direct instruction. We're looking forward to some fantastic results from our students and to sharing that journey with you today.
I think the big thing about the way education has been moving has been to making sure that the children have the tools that they need to be successful. And EDI makes sure that they do. EDI makes sure that they know what's coming, they know how their lesson's going to be structured so that they don't have to worry about that. They know that they're going to be supported in the learning and they know what they need to do to be successful.
What do odd numbers end in, everybody?
1, 3, 5, 7, 9.
Let's do it again. What are odd?
1, 3, 5, 7, 9.
Let's read this column. Loving.
Loving.
Outrage.
Outrage.
What are nouns, everybody?
Person, place, or thing.
What are nouns?
Person, place, or thing.
You've got it. What's 7 fours?
28.
What's 7 fours, everyone?
28.
What's 2 fours?
48.
2 fours?
8.
2 fours?
8.
No, 2 fours.
8.
Got it.
Because we're so early in our journey with EDI, we're only expected to be teaching maths warm-ups and reading warm-ups. Some teachers have taken on more because they're so excited with the process. The main change I've seen is that I've able to get them all engaged at once. I'm actively engaging them in every lesson. Another change is, I guess, that I've seen an increase in academics already.
Okay, listening to me. Wait for my click for your answer. 2 11s. 22. 2 11s.
22.
5 11s.
55.
10 11s.
110.
10 11s.
110.
5 11s.
55.
6 11s.
66.
77 divided by 11.
7.
66 divided by 6.
11.
66 divided by 6.
11.
One of the best things is the checking for understanding. So because there's a lot of work on the floor and the students are working on their whiteboards and showing me their work straight away, I'm able to check for understanding and pick up those students who are having difficulties straight away. The way I structure my students, I have my bottom students at the front, my middle students in the middle and my top students at the back. So I'm always accessing those students that need the most assistance, which has been really beneficial, and on top of them when they need their assistance.
In a good EDI lesson, the kids know you've given them the background information, you've done a really quality warm-up before the lesson started, so you've really brought back some of that prior knowledge they're going to need for the lesson, and all of a sudden I have children now who are now willing to get up the front and self-talk and answer clearly, and they've got a huge smile on their face because they want to participate in the lesson now because they are not embarrassed. They know they're going to succeed because it's very clear how to succeed.
Walking into classrooms now and seeing all students actively engaged in lessons is going to be the best benefit for our school, and from there the roll-on effect will be academic progression. So that's a really exciting venture.
What I love about teaching EDI and the passion that I get from it is the fact that I am seeing such success in my students, and it's so satisfying as a teacher to find a pedagogy that works across the board, that is getting great results, that works for kids across all stages. And we work hard. It's nice to work hard and get amazing results and have happy children because they're feeling intelligent. So that's probably the best bit.
So there is, of course, a place for discovery learning, but it's implicit instruction, and so it's more effective with expert learners with established knowledge and skills. Cognitive load experts say that teachers should use spaced or distributed review of information and skills. When something is recalled with automaticity, there's less load on working memory. So, for example, if a student has automatic recall of number facts, it's easier for that student to attend to the meaning of a worded maths problem than it is for the student who has to stop and try to work out those facts. It's a paradox, but to remember, we need to forget. We need a reason to retrieve information from long-term memory. So initially, you might review a piece of information daily, then every 2 days, then every week, then every month, every term, and so on. The research also shows that practice should be interleaved, which means that instead of focusing exclusively on one concept or skill at a time in revision, it's helpful to alternate concepts. I'm going to show you a model of a method of achieving spaced interleaved practice with an individual. It's a learning mastery folder. So let's have a look at how that works.
Hi, my name's Nicola Carwhite and I've been teaching for a long time. In recent years, I completed a research master's to apply learning science findings to the process used by mastery learning folders. The foundational theory is desirable difficulty, which is based on the reality that our brain doesn't like the effort involved in trying to remember something. However, if we keep demanding the recall of learning, that struggle strengthens the memory to avoid future effort. The Mastery Learning Folder tool combines the desirable difficulty strategy of spaced retrieval practice with mastery learning. Learning items in flashcard format enter the process here. The content on this side of the folder is usually tested by peers, parents, or education assistants in short 5-minute practice sessions 4 or more times during the week. Learning items only move forward to the next pocket when they test correctly, otherwise they return to the same pocket. When learning items first enter the process, the spaced intervals are short over days, making the struggle to remember easier. However, as the learning item is strengthened, the inclusion of rest pockets expand the interval between tests. The learning items in rest pockets are not tested at the next session, they're simply moved as a bundle to the next pocket. When learning items test correctly from this pocket, they graduate to the right side of the tool, the blue pockets. Often the teacher takes responsibility for testing these 2 pockets to gauge student progress. The green pockets facilitate retrieval practice over days. The blue pockets rest and test content on a weekly schedule. So once a week, testing includes the blue pockets. The content here has been rested for up to 2 weeks. The content here has been rested for up to 3 weeks before testing. At every interval, desirable difficulty is maintained and the learning item is strengthened, ready for the recall attempt at the next interval. The process and the arrangement of pockets completely manages the pace and progress of flashcards through the tool. Learning items won't arrive at the mastery test pocket until they are ready to do so. If they test correctly, the teacher can be confident that the learning has moved into long-term memory. The Mastery Learning Folder tool facilitates all types of cross-curricular learning objectives, including social and emotional goals. The folder process works equally well for kindergarten through to university students. It facilitates differentiation for students with additional educational needs or those with learning extension goals. If you're interested, I invite you to visit masterylearningfolders.com.au to learn more and access the free flashcard club containing Australian curriculum content.
So with a whole class or small group, you might use a slideshow review, such as you saw in the Blue Haven video. You might sometimes use Kahoot, which students really seem to enjoy. We want to optimise elements of learning that facilitate deep processing, to increase the germane load. One suggestion today is that wherever possible, you make instruction multisensory. So use visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile input in some combination. When introducing a new concept, use a video, an experience, a mind map to stimulate thinking and connection of old information to new. Use show and tell. By that I mean you should present instructions both orally and visually so that you're supporting both the verbal working memory and the visual spatial working memory. Oral instructions are transient. As soon as I finish speaking, the information's gone. That places a load on working memory. Written instructions don't have to be remembered. They can be reread. Activities using the taught information should be as multisensory as possible. When multiple senses are stimulated, information is more likely to be retained and integrated. By using multisensory activities, you're also more likely to be meeting individual needs within a group. We're going to watch a short video that shows you some multisensory techniques for teaching science.
Morning ladies, this morning we're going to talk about multisensory teaching. We're going to be teaching about the heart today.
For Dr. Susie Nyman, more than 20 years of teaching science to non-scientists has taught her that a variety of colourful and interesting multisensory techniques is needed to help her students engage with complex information and the correct scientific language.
The students find science really difficult. They tend to be turned off when they first come into class, and so you've got to do it in a fun and exciting way. So I try to do multisensory techniques, i.e. using sight, smell, touch, taste, in whatever way I can. We're going to do the circulatory song and we're going to do a laminated question.
Susie starts each lesson by outlining the structure of the session. Her students know exactly what to expect over the coming 60 minutes.
We start off by singing the key words to a song. For example, if it's The Heart, it's Michael Jackson's Beat It. And that relaxes all the students and they feel really relaxed about those key words to start with. What's this one?
Pulmonary artery.
Excellent. The next one?
Pulmonary vein.
Good.
Left atrium.
Next one? The next stage, we quite often make a model, a very simple model out of Play-Doh so that they can feel it. And recently I've found some smelly Play-Doh that they really enjoy using, and so the red smells of strawberries, the blue smells of blueberries, the green smells of apples, and the yellow smells of bananas. So it takes the students back to their childhood, which then they start feeling safer about the subject. What they like is the commentary. When we're doing the heart, I say to them, for example, the atrium. It's the largest room in the Roman house. So they've got this hook. And what's really important for my students is that they can visualise something that they can then link back to what they've got to understand. When we get to the valves, the tricuspid and the bicuspid valve, I say to them, in Sainsbury's, you try before you buy. And they can all remember that. So then they can remember the tricuspid and the bicuspid valve. And by making giant mats on the floor and walking through it, they're more likely to remember it.
Which then goes to the try before you buy. So we start with the tricuspid, so the tricuspid valve, which then goes here. And then we turn to the right ventricle, which then goes here.
And the first time I used the heart map with a boy, he said to me, "Can I do it again, please? I didn't quite get it." And he did it 5 times. And then he went back and taught all his friends about the heart and relayed all the different parts back to them so that they could understand it.
The learning environment is important too. It needs to be a space where students feel both inspired and comfortable.
I'm really lucky at the college because I'm one of the few teachers that has their own classroom. So I take pride in making my room as exciting as it can be for my students, that the resources around the room, that their work is displayed in the room, and they really, really enjoy coming in here. They'll be champing at the bit outside wanting to come into SS5 because it's a really, really lovely environment. So now we're actually going to model the digestive system using balloons. So which is the first part of the digestive system then?
The mouth.
Excellent.
Susie's inventive approach to teaching science has made it a popular topic within the college, where pupils are eager to see what she'll come up with next.
The biggest thing that I have with my students is their mindset. And they'll come in from school with a fixed mindset and you're moving it into a growth mindset. And we try and sort of break down the barriers of aiming high and saying, you can all get a distinction star if you want. You know, we'll support you in a way that enables you to be able to reach the top grade. Thank you very much for listening and competing today, ladies. That was really absolutely fantastic.
So to recap the main points of Susie's multisensory approach. Use multisensory methods to fix learning in students' memories. Create a growth rather than fixed mindset. Find ways to make difficult vocabulary accessible and memorable. Personalise the learning environment to create learner ownership.
Okay, so far I've talked about what teachers can do to reduce the load on working memory. Now I want to focus on what students can do for themselves. We can teach them cognitive strategies that they can then use independently whenever and wherever they need. These include verbal rehearsal, visualization or imaging, mnemonics, chunking, paraphrasing, use of colour, use of rhythm, rhyme, music, movement, and use of gestures. Due to limited time, I'm just going to talk today about use of visualization and colour. Visualization involves drawing information either physically or in the mind. It's a really important reading strategy because so much working memory is required for decoding and recalling and integrating information that's contained in sentences. Many students aren't even aware that they should be visualizing when they read. You may need to teach a student how to make a mental movie as they read. They should read a sentence, stop at the full stop, and imagine what the information in that sentence would look like on the TV screen. Do the same thing for subsequent sentences, and they'll have to make adjustments to previous images as necessary. So, for example, you might not learn anything about a character's appearance in the first paragraph of the text, but then in the second paragraph, there might be quite a bit of detail. So they're going to have to adjust the image that they had in mind. I check the effectiveness of a student's visualization by asking them very specific questions about detail. It's not enough for a student just to have the general gist of the text. Graphic novels can support weak working memory by providing a visual alternative to pages and pages of writing. I find the graphic versions of Shakespeare's plays are fantastic when kids have to learn Shakespeare. You can teach students to use visualization in any subject. Writing is a complex task. Students have to think about key ideas, word choice, spelling, punctuation, sequencing of ideas, all at the same time. Consequently, writing has a very heavy cognitive load. When students have to do some writing on a subject, encourage them to use a story map a picture board or a mind map to help them sequence ideas and connect ideas. We're going to watch a short video that is going to give you the basics of mind mapping.
Hi, let's talk about how to mind map. Here are the top 5 basics of mind mapping. Mind mapping is a visual way of taking notes. We use central images, curving branches, keywords, and visuals like colour and images to create 3 different types of mind maps for different uses. The visual way of doing mind maps is different from the written way. On a horizontal page, we create a map of the information, compared to linear notes and lists of notes and bullet points, etc., which can take up 4 times as much room. It's ideal for visual thinkers, dyslexics, people doing exams, and teenagers studying and learning how to learn. Central image can also be a shape and is the main topic or phrase to focus in on. The curving branches go under the words, like this. You've got the central image, branch, word on top, word on top, word on top, versus doing a central image, a branch, then a word, a branch, then a word, because it falls off the page. Or doing a branch, a bubble, and that also falls off the page and doesn't last very long. So going under the word is very important in a mind map. Clockwise is another feature of mind mapping. For example, we draw all our branches in clockwise order and also the sub-branches, even once you get round the other side. It helps other people read your mind map. Then there's the level of importance. The branches are ordered in level of importance. Concepts go towards the centre and details towards the edge. We use thick branches for the centre and thin branches for the edge, like a tree. Now, key words are there to unpack sentences and unlock the meaning inside of them. For example, I've used 1,700 words in this video and it's written down in 155. We unlock key ideas, facts and connections. It's a crucial life skill that mind mapping can help you with. Unpacking is really important. Then there's ranking the keywords, again in order of importance and detail. Importance towards the centre, detail towards the edge. How many words do you put on a branch? Well, 1 is what you do most of the time. 2 occasionally. For example, a pair of words like Mind Map Studio fits as kind of 1 meaning. What about more? Like a quote? Well, sparingly. You can put it towards the edge of the map and write down the quote like it's a poster. Give exam confidence to dyslexic teenagers if you want the exact phraseology. But try not to get caught up in that, because that can make a very messy map. And we write in capitals, not cursive. Visually, we use colour and colour each branch the same. And we use images for landmark ideas and facts. Symbolic ones that are simple and not, you don't need to be an artist to do this. It's kind of like painting by numbers. It's important to know that there are 3 types of mind map. A spider map, a mind map and a memory map for different uses. A spider map is rough, sketchy, using central image, branches and words. It's a bit messy, it's a first draft, and you use it most of the time, 60% of the time. A mind map uses all 5 principles. It's a bit messy as well, but a memory map is neat, structured, and this is for a real result, like a talk, an essay, an exam, a business plan, a blog, etc. And you only really do this about 10% of the time because you need to redraw it. There you have it, all the 5 basics of mind mapping. Now please remember, mind mapping is a bit like learning how to ride a bike. Someone can show you the bike and tell you all these principles of sitting, getting your balance, pedaling, pushing off and cycling away. Normally you need a little bit of practice and a little bit of help at the beginning to get a feel of things, and then you're sorted and can go on your own way. At mindmapstudio.com, we're here to help you with more videos like this to make your...
Okay, so we're going to get you to practice right now. So I'm going to ask you to have in front of you the coloured pencils that you were requested to have handy. And I'm going to ask you to mind map what you have learned to this point about working memory. So I'm going to get you to pause this webinar video and take about 8 minutes to use the principles of mind mapping that you've just seen and heard. So we're making a mind map about what you have learned so far about working memory. Hit the pause button and take about 8 minutes. You can create a mind map with students to help them summarise content or to plan a piece of writing. Students might summarise information in comic strip format, which you can see here. Visualisation is very important in maths. So at the top of the screen, you can see the Singapore Maths Bar Model method, which helps students to visualise worded problems. Proportional rectangles are used to represent the numerical information. Use visual aids wherever possible. For example, visual schedules and countdown clocks to help with time management. Visual prompts and graphic organisers for writing tasks. Photographs for recalling the steps in a procedure or a task. Students can be taught to use colour to aid recall. You've just used it in mind mapping to group together ideas that belong together. In maths, it can be used to help the students to visualise integers and to highlight place value, as you can see in the image here. There are now a number of colour-coded grammar programs that can help students to create and analyse sentences. Each part of speech has its own colour. We can use alternating colours to visualise the syllables in a word. I'll get you to have a go now. Try with the word visualise. Sing the word in syllables, then write the syllables in alternating colours. So you should have VIS, change colour, U, change colour, AL, change colour, ISE. Provide students with flowcharts for a task, each step in a different colour, to aid placekeeping. When writing on the board, you might write the lines in alternate colours to aid placekeeping. You might get the students to colour code the materials and the books needed for each subject to support organisation. Colour increases our level of attention and arousal, which in turn increases recall. Working memory has been likened to an elastic band. You've got what you've got, but you can always stretch it, making the most of neural plasticity. Studies of individuals who have suffered a brain injury suggest that working memory can be strengthened and stretched with specific, focused, intensive training. Teachers can stretch verbal working memory simply by using cards on which are pictures, words, letters, or numbers. So you would start by showing a sequence of 3 cards. Ask the student to tell you what they are, but in reverse order. You can gradually increase the number of cards in the sequence. To make the task more challenging, you can add, but first say. If you're using letters, you might ask the student to say the letters that they've seen in alphabetical order. If you're using numbers, you might ask them to say them in numerical order. If you're using words, you might ask the student to first say the word that starts with a specific letter. So this card activity can be adapted for whatever subject you happen to be teaching, and it's often best done with a peer, each child taking their turn to be the questioner and the answerer. Students can be asked to create their own cards. There are a number of free apps that could be used to exercise working memory in a non-threatening way. One of these is Monster Hunt. Students have to remember where the monsters are on a series of cards that are arranged in a grid. At the start, there are 4 monsters and 9 cards, and then the number of monsters and cards gradually increase. The game is adaptive, so if the student fails to remember correctly, then 1 less monster is shown in the next game. At later stages, finding a torch gives you a life, and hearts help you stay in the game and move up the leaderboard. You'll find that most of the apps focus on visual spatial working memory, and they're very similar in design. There are a number of commercially produced brain training apps that have a working memory component, such as Lumosity. There are also computerized and online working memory programs, such as CogMed, which is the one most widely used in Australia. The student completes a series of video game-like exercises, such as remembering and repeating the order in which a panel of lights or a field of asteroids is illuminated. The system responds to right and wrong answers, so it is an adaptive program. These programs can be relatively expensive. I would recommend that to support students who have low working memory, you not rely on a brain training program alone, but that you modify your instruction, tasks, and the learning environment, provide strategy training, and use an app or a program in addition to that where practical. I hope that I have stimulated your interest in working memory and the impact that it has on learning success. Please consider joining me in a full-day Critical Agendas webinar to learn more about how working memory works and what undermines and overloads it, assessment tools that teachers can use, more strategies for managing and reducing the load on working memory, and also programs designed to strengthen working memory. Thank you for sharing your time with me today.